So that's what you look like. You're ugly.
Yeah.
Horrible. Go on. Try your intellect on me. I'll see you in hell first.
Oh, yeah, that's quite the welcome, isn't it? Welcome, everyone, to the deep dive.
It is. And today we're doing something a little different. Our source material isn't, the usual stack of reports.
No, today we're diving into the audio for the movie Elvira, Mistress of the Dark.
Exactly. Which, okay, you might hear that and think, can't be fun, right? Elvira cracking jokes. And yeah, it is funny.
It definitely is. But what's really interesting and what we want to explore is how much is actually packed in there.
Yeah, like beyond the jokes. It's stuff about character, how conflict builds, maybe even some sly social commentary.
Precisely. So our mission for this deep dive is to really listen closely to these clips, look past the obvious humor.
Find the surprising bits, the insights, what makes this narrative tick.
Right. We want to track Elvira's journey, figure out the main conflicts, and see what makes this seemingly, light story actually kind of resonate. We'll cover everything from her job woes to this bizarre inheritance.
Oh, yeah, and landing in that very particular town.
Exactly. It's quite a ride.
Okay, so let's start where the audio drops us in. We meet Elvira. She's this horror movie host.
The gal with the enormous ratings, as she says.
Right. But you can tell immediately she's kind of over it.
Yeah.
She's making fun of the monsters, calling one Gumby on steroids.
Yeah. She's clearly bored, making jokes about how bad the movies are.
Which tells you right away, okay, this is someone looking for a change. She's not satisfied.
That's the hook, isn't it? That dissatisfaction. She wants more. She's got this big dream, headlining her own show in Las Vegas.
And that becomes the goal, the thing driving everything forward. It's a classic setup, really. Someone yearning for something bigger.
And there's a specific obstacle tied to that dream.
Yeah, the money. $50,000 she needs for the Vegas show. That's a lot.
It is, and it immediately creates stakes. Plus, you mentioned her job. She also really hates her boss.
Oh, the sleeves ball? Yeah, she definitely doesn't want to crawl back to him. So, clear goal, big obstacle, and this, independent streak.
Right, that financial hurdle makes the conflict concrete. How's she going to get this money, especially on her own terms? It taps into that common story theme, chasing a dream against the odds.
And then, just when she needs it, bam, a telegram.
Perfect timing, or so it seems.
Totally. Turns out she had a great aunt, Morgana Talbot, who she never even knew existed. And this aunt just died and left Elvira something in the will.
Suddenly, that Vegas dream seems possible again. Her reaction, is that timing or what? It's funny, but it also sets up this big expectation.
You think, okay, here comes the money.
It's that classic trope, isn't it? The unexpected inheritance from a long-lost relative. It just throws the whole story in a new direction.
But then comes the actual reading of the will, and it's not quite the windfall she expected.
Yeah, talk about an anticlimax. No bags of cash.
Nope. She gets a house in some small town, a poodle.
Who she immediately renames Gunk, which is pretty funny.
And a recipe book. Recipe book. That's it.
You can feel the disappointment, right? The huge gap between what she hoped for, lots of money, and this weird collection of stuff.
It's great comedic timing, that gap.
And it makes you wonder why these specific things. It hints maybe there's more going on than just, a slightly stingy aunt.
Definitely. And then you hear about the other beneficiaries. Mrs. Morsey gets a tea service and $5,000. Mr. Morsey gets a car and another $5,000.
And then there's Uncle Vincent Talbot.
Right. Elvira's uncle, he gets, wait for it, the rest of the estate, which the lawyer then clarifies is none.
Ouch. That immediately flags him, doesn't it? You think, okay, this guy might be trouble. There's got to be some resentment there.
You'd think so. And then this dumb recipe book, as Elvira calls it.
This suddenly becomes very interesting.
Yeah, because Uncle Vincent is desperate for it. He offers her $50 for it. 50.
Which is suspicious, right? For just some old recipes. It tells you immediately that book has some other kind of value, at least to him.
And then he drops that line about it having more power than your feeble little minds can ever imagine.
Okay, now we're definitely not talking about casserole recipes. Or maybe we are, but not just casserole recipes.
Right, it introduces this whole potential fantasy element. But Elvira, she just thinks he's nuts and wants the $50.
Which is great dramatic irony. We, the audience, suspect something's up with the book, but she's still completely focused on the cash for Vegas.
So she takes the $50, grabs Gunk the poodle, and heads off to Falwell, Massachusetts to check out this inherited house.
And her first take on the town is memorable.
This quaint little hellhole. Yeah, she's not impressed. Sets the tone perfectly for what's coming.
Absolutely. It establishes the setting as this potentially hostile place for someone like her. That contrast her personality versus this town is going to be a big source of conflict.
She checks into the motel, the cozy cot, and immediately starts meeting the locals. And there are characters.
Definitely unique. There's the motel owner with his odd stories, and that whole scene with the grandmother and granddaughter arguing about makeup.
Oh my God, yes. So over the top. It paints this picture of a town with some really rigid ideas about things, maybe a bit repressed.
That's a good way to put it. These encounters show the town's resistance to anything different, anyone who doesn't fit their mold.
She also runs into Robin, this local teenager, who seems a bit out of step with everyone else, too. Robin mentions there's basically no fun allowed in Falwell.
And Robin becomes this potential ally, right?
Hmm.
Someone else who feels constrained by the town. It hints that maybe not everyone is going to hate Elvira's arrival.
Maybe, but the first big clash happens pretty fast at the bowling alley.
Right, the bowling alley. She tries to order a drink, gets shot down because, it's Falwell.
And then gets into this scrap with some locals, Dilly and Patty. Classic fish out of water stuff. She gives as good as she gets, though.
Definitely shows she's not going to just quietly conform. It really cements her as the outsider who's going to shake things up.
Luckily, Bob Redding steps in. He
Yeah.
owns a local movie theater. Seems like a nice guy, if maybe a little straight-laced.
Yeah, he runs a strictly G-rated operation, which tells you a lot about the town general vibe.
And Elvira, being Elvira, immediately hits on him with that line, "My name's Elvira, but you can call me tonight."
Hey, classic. So Bob's maybe a potential friend or
Yeah.
something. But his whole G-rated thing just highlights the massive gap between him and Elvira.
Yeah, especially when she jokes about putting lots of sex and violence in G-rated movies. That kind of sums up the whole culture clash right there.
It really does. You hear about the town council being terrified of anyone having a good time. It's Elvira's whole persona versus this town's fear of anything outside their very narrow comfort zone.
So back to the inheritance fallout. She officially meets Uncle Vincent.
Vinny, and he's still after that book.
Yep, still offering just the $50, and she actually agrees to sell it to him. Still totally clueless.
It feels like such a mistake, knowing what we suspect. But for her, it's just $50 closer to Vegas.
Then she finally goes to see the house she inherited, and her first reaction is just, what a dump.
Doesn't sound promising.
But then the lawyer mentions, hey, fix it up. It could actually be worth some serious money, maybe $70,000 or more.
Okay, so now the house isn't just a dump, it's a potential asset. Another possible path to Vegas, but it's going to take work.
Exactly. And just as she's processing this, she meets Mrs. Chastity Pariah.
Oh boy. Head of the morality club.
Yes. And she is, wow, like a caricature of small-town judgment. Instantly hates Elvira on sight.
And starts ranting about these completely wild fears like sex ed leading to condoms for kindergartners.
It's so over the top, it's hilarious, but she immediately establishes herself as a major antagonist. She represents the most extreme, fearful part of the town.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But surprisingly, Elvira does start trying to fix up the house, with Gunk the poodle helping.
And even more surprisingly, some of the local kids, like Robin, who actually defies her grandma to do it, and these guys, Rich and Randy, they all volunteer to help her.
That's interesting. It shows there's a segment of the town, maybe the younger generation, that's drawn to her that isn't automatically hostile.
Right. A little glimmer of hope. But Mrs. Pariah and the school principal, Mr. Cobb, they are not having it.
No, they go on the attack, calling her a person of easy virtue, a one-woman Sodom and Gomorrah.
Seriously intense stuff. They're basically launching a campaign to get her run out of town any way they can. Their fear of her influence is just huge.
It shows how powerful that kind of social pressure and outright prejudice can be in a closed community.
Meanwhile, poor Elvira is getting these frantic calls from Manny, presumably her agent or manager back home.
The Vegas pressure cooker.
Totally. He's leaving threatening voicemails, basically saying, where's the 50,000? It adds this whole other layer of urgency. She needs to sell this house like yesterday.
That ticking clock really raises the stakes for her situation in Falwell. Everything feels more desperate.
And then the big reveal. She's looking for that recipe book Vinny bought.
Which she probably wants back now, realizing the house might not sell fast enough.
Maybe. Or just cleaning. Anyway, she finds this hidden letter from Aunt Morgana.
Uh-huh. The truth comes out.
Does it ever? Turns out, Elvira's mother, Devanna, was the original Mistress of the Dark. Like a powerful sorceress.
Wow. Okay. So magic is definitely real in this
Oh,
story.
yeah. And
Yeah.
Uncle Vincent, he's apparently been obsessed with getting the family's power for like 300 years. He wanted her mother's power. Now he wants
For
Elvira's.
300 years. So he's not just a grumpy uncle. He's ancient evil.
Pretty much. And that recipe book, it's actually her mother's book of magic spells.
The cookbook is a grimoire, of course it is. That changes everything.
Completely reframes the whole story, right? It's not just a comedy anymore. It's fantasy. It's supernatural.
And explains Vincent's obsession perfectly. Why he only offered $50 trying to get it cheap before she realized.
The letter also mentions a familiar.
Let me guess. Gunk the poodle.
Bingo. And it warns about an upcoming lunar eclipse, saying it's a time of great power and she needs to protect the book from Vincent.
So now there's magic, a prophecy, an ancient villain, a magical dog.
Oh,
It's a whole new ballgame.
it really is. This inheritance is way more complicated than she thought.
How does Elvira react to finding out she's basically, like, witch royalty?
Her reaction is peak Elvira. She realizes she's descended from like a major metaphysical celebrity, and her immediate first thought,
Let me guess. Use magic to get the Vegas money.
you got it. She tries to cast a spell called Sells Ricky Moolah for selling lots of money.
Oh, bless her heart. Points for trying, I guess.
Get it?
It's funny, though, how her focus is still squarely on Vegas, even with this massive revelation.
Right. She hasn't quite grasped the whole ancient power, dark destiny thing yet. And predictably, the spell doesn't quite work as planned.
It backfires.
Spectacularly. Instead of conjuring cash, she accidentally hits poor Bob, the movie theater owner, with a love spell.
Oh, no. Poor Bob. That's going to make things awkward.
Understatement. It adds this whole romantic complication to the mix and just stirs the pot even more in town.
It also shows magic isn't just point and zap, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're just reading from the book. Unintended consequences.
Definitely. Which leads us to the town picnic, hosted by none other than Chastity Pariah, taking immense pride in this wholesome event.
Oh, I can only imagine how that goes with Elvira around,
Yeah.
especially post-spellbook discovery.
Well, first off, Bob is acting completely love-struck and weird around Elvira thanks to the spell. That causes a stir.
Awkward.
But the real chaos comes from the potluck dish Elvira brings. She used recipes from the book, things like Adreowana and Gitra.
She cooked with magic spells. What happens?
People eat her casserole and start acting bizarre, totally losing their inhibitions, saying weird stuff like, revenge is better than Christmas. It's magical mayhem unleashed on the Falwell picnic.
Okay, that's hilarious, but probably doesn't help her reputation with the townsfolk.
Not one bit. It just makes her seem even more strange and disruptive to the likes of Mrs. Pariah.
And what about Uncle Vinny during all this? Is he still lurking?
Oh, yeah. He shows up again, this time offering $500 for the book. He's getting desperate.
She turns him down, presumably, now that she knows what it is.
Yep. She's not falling for it. So Vinny goes full villain, threatens her, threatens Gunk, even quotes the Wicked Witch of the West. I'll get you and your little dog, too.
Okay, so the gloves are off. He's not pretending anymore.
Not at all. And things escalate with the town, too. There's this incident with a statue, apparently involving a bull. Details are fuzzy in the audio.
But the result is predictable, I imagine.
Totally. Everyone blames Elvira. Mrs. Pariah uses it to whip the town council into a frenzy.
Let me guess. They find some convenient old law.
Exactly. They dig up some ancient town ordinance against spellcasting, demonology, alchemy, and conjuration.
Seriously. They're going full Salem witch trial.
Pretty much. And based on that, they arrest Elvira for witchcraft.
Wow. From quirky outsider to accused witch facing arrest, things went south fast.
Seriously. So now she's locked up.
Yeah.
And the Vegas deadline is looming. She's desperate.
She realizes the book.
Mm-hmm.
Her mother's magic book is probably her only way out.
Right. She tells Bob, who's probably still slightly bewitched, poor guy, where to find it, hidden under the floorboards in the house.
Her only hope lies in embracing the magic she just discovered.
But just as Bob's maybe on his way, guess who shows up at the jail?
Uncle Vinny.
Yep. Looking smug, declaring, the power is mine. And he starts using his own magic, messing with the jail, the bars.
Oh, right. He has powers, too. He's not just some creepy old guy. He's a sorcerer himself.
Exactly. And he's clearly powerful and totally intends to stop her from getting that book or using her own power.
So Elvira's trapped, Vinny's gloating, and the town.
The town has completely lost it. They're outside, torches may be implied, definitely shouting, burn the witch.
They're actually going to burn her at the stake.
It looks that way. They drag her out, tie her up, and her famous last words, just before they light the pyre.
What?
I think I left my oven on.
Even facing imminent fiery death, she's still Elvira. That dark humor is something else.
Isn't it? But just as the sheriff is about to give the order.
The lunar eclipse. The one Aunt Morgana warned about.
Precisely. The moon falls into the Earth's shadow. Robin and the kids are trying to intervene, yelling.
And Elvira remembers her aunt's message. Remember, you carry the power with you.
Yes. And that sheep-looking ring she inherited, it starts to glow. The eclipse activates her latent power.
This is the moment. Her magic finally awakens, just in the nick of time.
And just in time to face Vinny, who's right there. He taunts her, saying his amulet couldn't save her mother, and her ring won't save her.
So it comes down to a magical duel. Family versus family.
Exactly. They start throwing spells at each other, Calusar Ipso, stuff like that. Elvira's kind of figuring it out as she goes, but she's learning fast.
And she defeats him.
She does. Vinny, realizing he's losing, makes one last threat. I am a master of the dark, and I'll see you in hell first. And then he's, well, vanquished in a suitably dramatic way, I imagine.
Wow. So she embraces her power, defeats the ancient evil. Quite the climax.
Totally. And the aftermath is just as weird.
How so?
Well, first there's property damage from the magic fight. The insurance company's reaction, they don't cover acts of demons, which is just perfect.
You gotta love the mundane details colliding with the supernatural. What about the ring? Still glowing.
Nope. After the eclipse and the fight, it just looks like a cheap ring again. Power spent, maybe. Or just dormant.
And the townspeople.
Yeah.
The ones who were just about to, burn her alive.
Oh, they do a complete 180. Suddenly they're all apologies. We're so sorry, Elvira. They even offer her a free room at the Cozy Cot Motel.
Unbelievable. Talk about fickle. Oh, you defeated the ancient evil terrorizing our town. Are bad about the whole stake thing.
Pretty much sums it up. Their fear instantly turns into, well, maybe not acceptance, but definitely relief.
So the immediate threat is gone. What about the inheritance? And Vegas?
The final twist. With Uncle Vincent gone, Elvira is now the sole heir to his estate, too.
The one that was supposedly none. Turns out he had assets after all.
Apparently. So she finally gets the money she needed. Maybe even more.
And she heads straight to Vegas.
You bet. The final scene is her triumphant on stage at the Flamingo Hotel performing her Mistress of the Dark act.
She made it. She achieved her dream.
And her opening line is just perfect. It echoes stuff she said earlier, that kind of defiant attitude. Well, if you're looking for trouble, here I am, full circle.
What a journey. From frustrated horror hostess to accidental witch, battling ancient evil, and finally getting her Vegas show.
So wrapping this up, what did we really pull from this deep dive into Elvira? I mean, it's definitely a story about self-discovery, right? Finding out who you really are.
Absolutely. And overcoming prejudice. Facing down not just a magical villain, but a whole town's fear and judgment. And like you said earlier, finding unexpected power, quite literally, in things that seem ordinary, like a recipe book.
It's way more layered than you might think just hearing Elvira movie.
Definitely. And maybe the aha moment for you listening is seeing how even something this campy and fun can actually explore pretty deep themes. Identity, how society treats outsiders. The humor just makes it all go down easier.
Yeah, it makes those themes stick with you. So if you came here looking for a quick but pretty thorough dive into this cult classics narrative, hopefully we delivered.
And if you just enjoy those wild twists and turns, well, Elvira's story certainly had plenty of those.
It did. So maybe a final thought to leave you with. Thinking about Elvira and Falwell, how do communities react to people who don't quite fit the mold? What does this story, underneath all the jokes and magic, really tell us about that?
Something to chew on. It's fascinating how humor can be used to explore those tensions.
It really is. Well, thanks for plunging into the wonderfully weird world of Elvira with us today.
Join us next time for another deep dive.